advertisers or anything. It's just to spread knowledge and help people out. And you can totally go ahead and do that. I don't have any like restrictions as far as guests reposting stuff. Now, individuals out there, I kind of don't like when you guys do that because I don't want you to profit off of my creation. This show is free,
Gotcha.
so I don't want you. Yeah, I don't want people taking a free show and then making money off of it. That kind of grinds my gears. But otherwise, it's totally cool. Yeah,
Understand.
but you can.
Well, I mean, I've put other people's shows on, but I don't. I mean, the money I make is less than $5 a year. I mean, it's nothing. I have 1,000 listeners, max at a time, so not like I make that much money.
Oh, that's not too bad. 1,000 listeners. That's a pretty good following.
Yeah, it's not bad for an unknown person like me. Not too shabby.
Yeah, a lot of people out there just have like 3.
Well, I'm fortunate in that way, I guess. I mean, I'm not Alex Jones or somebody like that. So.
Yeah, we could talk about Alex all night.
We can talk about a lot of stuff. We have to catching up to do. It's been like 2 years, right?
Yeah, 2 years. We did have a really excellent interview the first time around. We got very deep into it, but I should probably start off by just asking you how you've been. Is there anything currently going on that you'd like to touch on?
Well, a year ago, I finished a movie, a 3.5-hour movie that's available on Vimeo titled The Smiley Face Killers, who is abducting, torturing, and murdering young college-age men in the U.S. and U.K. So I put that out about almost a year to the day in October of last year, and I've had very good reviews. You can check out the reviews on my Vimeo page, Vimeo. Just look up Smiley Face or William Ramsey and the movie will come up. But people can rent it for $5. I think it's reasonable, or purchase it for $12. And there's tons and tons of information, but I think it's an important movie because these men have been inaccurately titled or put in a box where they supposedly accidentally drowned. And I make the case that they were meant to look accidentally drowned, but they were actually murdered. So that's the kind of gist of the whole movie. And it's a large number. It's like 50. There's probably 100 to 200 cases, if not 300 of these types of cases in the U.S., U.K., and all over the world.
Could you give us kind of the whole story of how it started and how it started to come under public attention?
Absolutely. There were 2 original police officers, Duarte and Gannon, out of New York City, that noticed that there was this pattern of young men being found in water, particularly in New York. There's a lot of cases in New York. And then another professor by the name of Gilbertson. And this started happening in the 90s. So they actually put out a book called Case Studies in Forensic Drownings, which is a superb book. There were also a couple of journalists, this one girl, Christy Peel, that kind of started covering these cases. And they noticed this pattern. So they did a very forensic look into many of these cases, noticed that some of these young men, they were being abducted in college towns, and there was a high preponderance of GHB, which is an endogenous substance in the human body, but in large doses, it causes blackouts, kind of like an extreme drug state, but people become very pliable. It's also known as the date rape drug. But those guys were really the original guys. They actually just did an interview recently. I hadn't been able to contact them while I was doing the research for my film, but they were the originals, and that was really kind of the baseline. And the reason I got into what was known as the Smiley Face Killers is because I was researching Aleister Crowley, and I kept noticing the smiley face associated with a lot of these occultists. Alan Moore uses it in this Watchmen movie, and I wanted to know the meaning. I wanted to know why these people had this smiley face. I wanted to know why there was an occult meaning, because I do believe that there's a surface meaning, but there's also an occult meaning. And I think that Alan Moore actually explains it very concisely within the Watchmen comic book and movie, and that is that life is a big joke. It doesn't matter what you do. And actually, if you watch the Watchmen movie, the introductory scene consists of the murder of the comedian who went to Vietnam and killed people indiscriminately and enjoyed it. So I do believe that theme is associated with this span of killings. I do believe the people committing these crimes are thinking about it. They're not casual, like lust criminals or somebody who, just commits a murder in a random way. I do believe these are planned events, and they have things figured out from the beginning and the end. So the smiley face killings, there's been some excellent research. There was a book there's a website called Footprints at the River's Edge, I believe, that followed all these cases. And there's just an incredible amount of cases through multiple jurisdictions. And so what I did is I started researching, and I talked to a variety of different people who looked into these cases differently. They saw things in Boston. They saw things in New York. There was one girl called Elise, and her name was Elise Soper. And you can listen to these on my YouTube channel, William Ramsey Investigates, if you're interested. But she actually made a post about the suspicious drownings that happened in Boston alone. And her blog just spiked. Everybody was interested. Like, yeah, there's something wrong here, But she saw this phenomenon from her place at Boston. She did an excellent job, and I interviewed her. But there's another guy, Gary J. out of the Manchester. They call this phenomenon the Pusher. And he's putting out a documentary very soon, I think by the end of the year. I'm featured in it talking about this subject because I researched the Manchester cases and the Bristol cases, which is in kind of the southwestern part of the UK. But, so I saw little pieces, and really my chief researcher was Jim Smith, and we kind of just crossed paths probably 2 years ago as we were both researching it. And he's still researching these cases to this day, and has done a superb job kind of organizing things like that. But he also saw this pattern. So really my goal was I really just wanted to figure out, is this really happening? Are these cases legit? And after my research, I started watching these men disappear and then being found in water. And probably one of the first ones was a case by the name of Joey LaBute out of Columbus, Ohio. And he disappeared, and for 18 days nobody knew where he was. And I was following that case day after day, watching developments. And then his body was found in the Scioto River in Columbus, Ohio. And that case was actually featured on a very popular true crime podcast called True Crime Garage. And I've talked to those guys about that case in particular. But like many of these other people analyzing these suspicious water deaths, they only see, I believe they only saw the smaller picture. My film tries to encapsulate the larger picture to show that these types of cases are happening all over kind of the Western world. And, so that was really an interesting kind of true crime. I've written another true crime book about the West Memphis 3 case and my take on that case, which was not very popular. But I do think that it's an important, this what's known as the smiley face killers. The reason it got its name by Gilbertson again is because they saw a correlation between these spray painted smiley faces that were close to the scenes of these crimes. And there was actually one case where, and it was out of Michigan, this young man, somebody put a smiley face on his gravestone 2 years after the day. So that's how this kind of phenomenon got the name smiley face killers. And I actually kind of got involved saying, well, I want to discount the connection between this symbol and these cases. And I really couldn't, because they were still showing up. There was another case out of Boston by the guy by the name of Zach Marr, whose people found a spray painted smiley face. He disappeared out of the downtown area. He was kicked out of a bar. And so it's a very dark tale. And I do not believe, in all of the cases, I cover about 50 cases in my documentary, and I believe that every single one of those cases was somebody who was met by misadventure and did not die accidentally. Still there?
Oh, sorry, I had an audio issue in the background. I had to turn off real quick. Okay. One thing I wanted to ask about the smiley face killers, this is very perplexing, of course, and very mysterious, these smiley faces. Yeah. You said they were given a drug. How could this was not a sexual thing? They weren't raped?
Well, that's a great question. I believe that is the primary motivation for these cases. So I kind of just wanted to get the word out. What's not there is any financial crimes. There's somebody doesn't go to their ATM and steal their money. So I think that if you look at the pool of the victims, they're almost all kind of they have a low body mass index. They're very generally athletic, good looking. So I do believe that they fit a type that certain predators are interested in. So that's why they're young college-age men. I believe they're college-age men because they're much more vulnerable after leaving home at 18, living out by themselves and being out late at night. So I do believe that these predators, and in different jurisdictions, hunt for these men late at night at bars, and some are drugged and some aren't. There was a case out of Boston, a guy by the name of Kelleher. He came out of a Boston Celtics game and called an Uber and disappeared. And he looked pretty good. I mean, the thing is, if you watch my movie, you can tell that a lot of these men are not stumbling drunk. Some are, but some are definitely upright. But he walked out and they pinged his cell phone going the wrong direction from his house. He was at this park called Paul Revere Park. So, that was one case that was high profile. And there was another case that happened nearby there called a guy by the name of Hurley. Same thing. He was waiting for his girlfriend to pick her up. And he was just sitting there on a corner and disappeared. Literally disappeared right from a ball game and then was found in the river. Both Hurley and Keller are found in the same part of the river there in Boston. So I do believe that these are lust crimes. They're not financial crimes. And they do most of the earlier cases were all kind of white people, but I think there's been some other cases that involved, people Hispanic, people of Asian background, some African American. So it's the pool isn't specifically all, white Westerner types.
And I believe earlier you said they were tortured, right?
Well, I do believe they're held. I don't know the full extent of the torture of every individual, but there's evidence that there was a kid named Hart out of Rhode Island who clearly had signs that he was tortured. One of the earlier cases that Gannon and Gilbertson keyed in on was this young man named McNeil out of New York who was found in a water treatment facility in the south part of the Hudson Bay. And he, once the parents didn't know what happened to him, but once they got the autopsy, it showed that he had been blowtorched on the upper part of his body. I think he had chipped teeth and element of a hammer claw to his head, as if somebody took a hammer. Yeah, so what a very famous forensic pathologist by the name of, now it's escaping me, but he said that it looked like he had been restrained before he was tortured, which is why the upper part of his body showed those. Cyril Wecht is he's a famous kind of forensic. He's worked on the JFK assassination. But so he looked at this case and said, look, this guy's tortured. So I do believe that many of these cases, the reason why, one of the puzzling phenomenon of these cases is these men will disappear and then there will be a massive search. There will be a search for 2-3 weeks looking. There were water teams, sniff dogs like hound dogs. And some of the hound dogs will find traces of the scent, but oftentimes these men disappear and then reappear in areas that had already been previously searched. So I do believe that abduction is a form of torture and they're kept somewhere alive for a period of time before they're murdered and then put in river. There was a case out of Pittsburgh, I believe it's 2 years ago, last year, maybe it was 2017. His name is Dakota James, was missing for 40 days. And when they found his body, the place where they found his body had been searched the previous day. Cyril Wecht, by the way, lives in Pittsburgh. So, I got some info. Well, yeah, so that case he looked into too. So that's a hyper suspicious days. Where is the body for 40 days? Now, a normal body decomposes, prior, when people deceased, they decompose. And oftentimes in water, they'll float to the surface or they're easily found, generally found. And where was this person, Dakota James, for 40 days? Why wasn't he found after a serious search of I think it's the Ohio River? So, and that's the same. And if you watch the documentary, I tried to emphasize that theme by looking at, all of these police officers. Say, well, we just checked there yesterday. Oh, yeah, we looked for him. Why didn't we find him? There's another case out of Pennsylvania. A young man was at a bar in Manayunk, and his name escapes me right now. But he was found in 4 feet of water, but the water that had been previously checked, that men had walked down and watched it. So why wasn't he found in an obvious place? So that's like the, his name was Shane Montgomery out of Manayunk, Pennsylvania. And there's a lot of cases in Pennsylvania. They're definitely hot spots. Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, New York, the college towns in the far north of Wisconsin and Minnesota. And so it's definitely, and there's been cases there's been cases in Atlanta, California, Portland, a lot of cases in Portland. So this phenomenon, it's it's important to get that warning out if you're a younger man drinking at a bar, because like women know that they could be drugged at a bar, but men are oblivious that they could be victims. And I think a lot of these men who were victims never saw it coming. They had no idea that there was a predator that was sussing them out. And there's actually been stories that have come to my attention of men telling stories being in a bar. Some guy comes up to him, starts asking questions. What's your name? Trying to get a background, like they're trying to get information on these people. And one of the interesting things about these cases is that very few, I don't think there's anybody of all these cases who was famous or had political connections, which I find, rather remarkable. So it's almost like somebody doesn't want somebody family isn't powerful to figure out what's going on. They want somebody from a middle class kind of family. So,
and do the bodies show that they had been raped?
Well, that's a great question. And I think that I don't have access to the autopsy reports. Those are family matters. It actually is hard for the families to obtain the autopsies, but there's been no real look into whether there's evidence of rape on these bodies. And I think, it's interesting. Since I put out the movie a year ago, I wrote in my summary that, here's a quote: "Federal and state authorities should assume any body of a young man found in water who had disappeared after a night out has more likely been murdered than died accidentally." So I think that was the why these cases got away with it, is that the police looked at these bodies and said, "Oh, he must have fell in the water and drowned," right? Instead of misadventure. So if their cops are looking at it that like away, an accidental drowning, not a murder, they're not going to take evidence. They're not going to look at the scene. And within the last year, some of these men who were found in water suspiciously are now, the police are actually, there was a case, where was it? I think it was Atlanta, where the cops said, "Oh, well, this is a very suspicious death. We're treating it as a suspicious death," which was very different than before. So I think really some of these other cases, like Joey LaBute, the police actually said, "We don't know how he got in the water." And it was interesting, Joey LaBute, when he died, he was at kind of a bar that was associated with gay bar. He was involved. He was gay. He was on some kind of dating app, like a men's dating app. So he was communicating. But on that weekend, there was a bodylifting tournament called the Arnold Schwarzenegger Classic. So there's a potential that the person who was involved in Joey LaBute's death flew into town. Crime was committed and left.
It would have to be a pretty, well, maybe not necessarily, but it seems like it would have to be a big, strong individual.
Potentially. If you look at the, not all these men are huge. They're not, I would say they're more on the slighter side. So, there's a lot of ways people can get in trouble. I mean, if they're drugged, then people know they're drugged. And I've always, I thought some of these bartenders and some of these other people might be involved in these cases. So it's not outside of the realm of possibility that they get slipped a Mickey. And I include in my documentary cases where guys like woke up under the train. There was a guy who woke up in a very strange place, and they took him to court. The police did, to charge him something. He said, "Be careful and watch your drink, because I don't even know how I got there." So. These things are potentials, So, yeah.
And it really highlights the danger of something that I really try to avoid, which is going out to places like clubs and bars by yourself, because that just it turns you into a huge target, really.
Yeah, it's a great point. And a lot of these cases are associated with fetish clubs or something like that. There was one guy out of Washington, D.C., who was at a bar that sidelined is also a BDSM bar, right? So when he died, he was found upriver. His name was Arvind Sharma. It was he was a Nepalese. So he was from Nepal, kind of in the northern part of India, this country in between India and China. But he, when he was dead, his brother said something to the public. He said, "Arvind must have been somewhere or saw something he shouldn't have seen." So he was, I think that he got separated. There's a lot of these stories where somebody gets separated from their friends, they get kicked out of a bar, and then things go wrong. So there is a lot of danger. And, if you look at the documentary I made, it's in different cities, different places where this is happening. And I connect it to the kind of rise of the internet where information can be exchanged in the dark web, and the rise of kind of fetish, which have probably always been there, but fetish sites like FetLife. And if you look through, I did some research. There was a movie on Netflix called Kink. And there are sequences in there involving men where they're torturing each other with water, So if that's, I do believe that that's a important factor in all these cases is this kind of...
You mean like waterboarding?
Like there's a scene that I show in my movie where there's a dude in like a bathtub and a guy standing over him and just shoving his head in the water. And it's being filmed for like like gay porn, but like it's just like that to me is something that could be associated easily with all these cases, is that they're pre-drowned somewhere else and then put in water.
That's really, of course, a really good point that you bring up, because in recent years, probably the last, I don't know, 5-7 years, BDSM or S&M or B&D or whatever you like to call it.
Right.
Yes, super mainstream, super accepted, super mainstream, and increasingly so as years go by.
It's an interesting point, and I think that that's something associated with these cases. And I don't want to ruin like my findings, but I found murderers in London and in the Northeast, and traveling guys who were in bands who were into this stuff. Things that were actually, there was one video that really I keyed into. That was a video called Broken that was associated with, his name is Trent Reznor. And he had this underground film called Broken that is a sequence that shows the abduction, torture, and murder of a man, like in a underground environment. And I was like, man,
I'm assuming this is Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails.
Correct.
Okay.
So, and I don't know if this movie was like, people thought it was real, like it was very realistic, and so that was kind of where the kind of light bulb went off in my head. Like, this fits the sequence of this. It's incredible too, because this young man that they abduct in the video looks like the standard SFK victim, So you can watch that on my film, which is overly long, but there's a lot of information there. 3.5 hours.
And that's another thing that what I'm trying to say is nowadays everybody's so sensitive about not saying anything bad about gays, it's discrimination, et cetera, but there is a certain dark side where these men are having to go out, and because they are so ashamed of themselves and what they're doing, they go out alone. They don't tell anybody where they're going.
Yeah, there's a lot of furtiveness, like underground, and I tied this into this underground. And it's important to remember that heterosexuals do things just as bad to women. Men do it to women. There was a guy called the Love Box Killer outside of Truth and Consequences, New Mexico. He was at a bar. He had a team. He had people helping him where he would drug women, take them to this place and torture them and kill them and then dump them in the desert. They actually don't know how many people he killed. But that was something similar to these types of cases. So that was a heterosexual case. And I do believe one of the mysteries and confusing aspects of these SFK killings is just like that. People don't understand this kind of subculture, so they don't comprehend what's happening to these men. I think that that's one of the things. But certain segments of the homosexual lifestyle are just as BDSM, just like men, so or heterosexual. So there was an interesting, you say that too, because I brought up, there was this movie that was done by the guy who directed The Exorcist. His name was William Friedkin, and he did a movie with Al Pacino, which a lot of people don't know about, but it was called Cruising, and it involved the hunt for a gay serial killer, somebody who was killing gay men, I believe, in New York City. So Al Pacino plays a detective who goes underground and starts going to like these really like fetish gay bars, and it was it was fascinating to watch that, because I felt like this was a correlation with these cases, but also the history of that film brought tons of resistance. Like, really, the certain members of that community came out and like protested the filming and disrupted it and all this stuff. So they're very sensitive about some of the information that Friedkin was willing to put in the film, which is extremely graphic. depictions of some of these like BDSM fetish practices. So, that is. I think that, yeah, you're right. There is. And it's interesting, too, you bring that up because there's a correlation. I studied a lot of these cases, and there's a significant number, probably 10 or 15 cases where these men are on Grindr or something else, I don't know what there's a couple other gay meetup sites or whatever, but that's a correlation, too. So those things are very dangerous. And I had people tell me, it's really easy to spoof a name and spoof a whole personality. So, if somebody's thinking about it, if there's a serial killer, they put up a fake, name. And also, like, I think, some people, these men get lured into something. They think they're meeting one dude, right? But, oh yeah, just come back to my place. It'll be just you and me. And then there's 3 other guys there and things go south, right? So
yeah,
something like that.
What's happening is they're thinking with their private parts, and they're getting so excited they're ignoring the danger.
Right. So they're lured by money, maybe. The fact that they're college students too, maybe that they're financially vulnerable too, is something I've thought. So maybe they're lured somewhere else. So yeah, it's really a shame, and there's a lot of broken families and parents who've had their hearts ripped out. There was this, I was telling you about Dakota James, but his family, made a burial plot. I mean, it's just a terrible story, but they made a family burial plot, and here's their son who has died from what I believe was a murder, and all of the family, parents' names and uncles' names are there. So he passed away before them, So, and that's not the way, God intended it. So it's just a real heartbreaking shame, some of these cases.
Yeah,
and I watch these cases, so I've probably watched. Jim Smith has probably seen 20 to 30 at least men disappear, follow their cases, and then watch them end up dead in water. So he's literally watched these murders take place. It's incredible. I've seen 5 or 10. This list of like, dude, if this guy gets found in water, I'm gonna freak out. And there it is again. Oh man, found in water.
I also have to wonder if this whole thing might be coming from the killer's hate of his own sexuality. Like, this is his way of expressing his own hatred towards himself for being a homosexual.
Possibly. I wouldn't say that's outside of the realm of possibility. There was a case that was very recent that happened in Toronto, and the killer's name was MacArthur, and he was a homosexual predator. And they caught him. There were men disappearing. There were actually a lot of like missing posters. There's tons of missing posters associated with these cases, and they were that I included in my movie. Because people want to find these men. But this MacArthur guy, gay bar, and he was burying his bodies at the bottom of. It's pretty grim, but he was burying the bodies at the bottom of planters. So he would plant a tree above it, and that's how he got rid of bodies. But, God only knows how many people that he murdered. And he could have been one of the smiley face killers. You just don't know. Somebody who's traveling around, a predator. You just don't know.
And to these people, the body, there doesn't necessarily have to be a rape, because the act of stabbing or torturing, that is a sexual thrill to the murderer.
Or, yeah, right. So tying somebody up, putting a gimp mask on them, these kind of like leather masks. There's a lot of weird stuff. And if you, like, I live in Los Angeles, and there are definitely fetish bondage stores, and y'all look in the window and there's a gimp mask. Like, what the hell's going on? What are you guys up to? So, yeah, it's really dark, but I do believe that's the sum thing. And the victims aren't all necessarily gay. They fit maybe a gay ideal, but maybe only half, which is really an overwhelming amount. I mean, it shows that this is kind of like a homosexual crime if half the people who are victims gay. But it doesn't mean that all the victims are within that lifestyle.
Yeah, there's extremes going on too, because there's plenty of people who practice these BDSM things that don't take it to a bloody or extremely painful or grotesque extreme either.
Agreed. Yeah, I think it's a subset. There was an interesting case here that was covered by. It was on the Ed Opperman report, and the guy's name was Skip Chasen, but he had some kind of. He was in Los Angeles. The interesting thing is the guy worked on big-time deals. He was very well connected, in one of these law firms or agencies where he would do multi-million-dollar movie deals involving huge celebrities, like the A-list celebrities. But on the side, he was known as like Master Skip or Master Bob. He was into BDSM, and he had a home dungeon in Los Feliz, this part of Los Angeles, where somebody died. Like he literally suffocated somebody to death. And he kept his job, went back to work. They was termed an accidental death. And that was that. And it's incredible. The guy's name, the journalist who covered that case, it'll come to me. But yeah, so there's like another case where somebody accidentally like gets taken to that level where, tortured to death. Here in LA, Skip Chasen. You can look it up, Chasen.
Do you feel like in most of these cases it's like the one you mentioned where it's one guy, or do you feel it's most likely small groups or even some sort of network of guys doing this?
That's an excellent question, and I would say that it's all of the above. So I do believe that there are individual predators. I believe that there are group predators, and I do believe that there may be communication through the dark web about this, how they figured out this kind of MO. Because at first glance, it's like the perfect crime. That's what your thing is, you can abduct somebody, put him in water, and fool the police, and nobody will follow up, right? Because he drowned, or the kid drowned, or nobody really knows what happened. So I do believe that that's why there's this commonality, this similar MO that's happening in multi-jurisdictions, is that somebody learned this MO, whether somebody's traveling between different, BDSM places or something, or they're communicating in the dark web. There's some really dark stuff in the dark web.
Oh, yeah, and another thing that's important to bring up about these BDSM activities is there's certainly always a phase where it requires you to put some sort of trust into the other person participating, and that's a great time to take advantage of a person, and when they're already tied up, drug them or begin killing them or beating them, or that's why they have safe words and things like that, because you're supposed to trust the other person.
Right, so that's master-slave, right? So the slave is supposed to trust. It's interesting that you brought that up because it brought to mind John Wayne Gacy, because his thing was he liked young boys or whatever, 13, 14-year-old boys. But he would befriend them, super nice, get them to the point where they would trust him, and he would put cuffs on them. Like, oh, it's no big deal. I'll show you where the key is, He would lure them in, and once he had the cuffs on, his whole personality changed. And that's when the kids got, off. Stop, cat. God damn. Sorry. That's when things went south. So, I think that that phenomena is possibly happening, something like that, Where like, oh, trust me, everything will be fine. And it's interesting you bring that up because the MacArthur case that I was talking about out of Toronto, there were survivors or people who had been with him and said that he, did things that where he would take a person all the way to the edge of suffocating or death, And one of the fascinating things is the reason when he got caught, this MacArthur guy, the police busted in to his apartment, and he had somebody tied up on the bed. He had somebody in bondage. Yeah, it's an incredible story. So I think that's why the police actually broke down the doors. They thought he had another victim. So, yeah, that's just an incredible case. So when you look at all these cases, and I include a lot of the potential murderers, when you look at them all, you see these similarities. There's one guy, I'll tell you out of the documentary. His name is Stephen Port, but he was he was 40 years old. He wore like a wig, but he had GHB just lying around his house all the time, and he was GHBing men, and he was on 3 different gay meeting sites, and his victims were all disposed in a church courtyard. He wrote fake notes and made them look like drug overdoses. But it was like watching, and one of the remarkable things about the Port case is he got away with it over and over again, kind of like the Smiley Face Killer cases, where nobody keys into what's going on. He got rid of it over and over again, and the way he got caught from doing this was the family of one of the victims wanted the CCTV video, which the police just overlooked. And they got the CCTV video of their loved one and said, who's this guy with John? Who's this other guy? Who's walking with him? And the police are like, I don't know. Well, the family found out who it was, and found out that Stephen Ford was associated with other mysterious deaths, and that's how he got busted. So that case is, and that was very recent. I think it was a 2016 arrest. So God only knows what else he was up to. Was traveling. He said that there was a network of predators, and he had been doing it for like his life, like a long time. And there was an inquest, like the way that the Brits do it is if things go wrong, there'll be an inquest that study went wrong. And I think that like 25 people were censured or brought up for bungling the Port case because they could have stopped some of the deaths that happened. So there are, potential killers out there. I do believe there are serial killers, probably 3 or 5 or at least 10 or definitely groups. And I talk about groups in my documentary. So they're definitely exemplars of these types of killers.
Yeah, I would hate to encourage anybody or anything like that, but the bottom line is that most of the killers that get caught right away, they get caught because they did something stupid. A lot of these guys that give it a lot of thought, they target homeless people, prostitutes, in this case, gay men at these BDSM bars and meetup apps and sites and things like that. The guys that really give it a lot of thought, they can kill 30 people, 60 people, even hundreds. It really boggles my mind how many people they're able to murder.
Yeah, it's. I mean, look at John Wayne Gacy. I mean, how many 35 known, and he actually dumped 2 of his victims in the river. So he got to the point where he was disposing of bodies in the river. Look at what is it, Jeffrey Dahmer, kind of like a strange bondage, lured people home and drugged them. And he was a homosexual. So yeah, so there's probably somebody out there who, I think if they ever catch him, people will be in shock that this is a person who's killed that many people.
In Gacy especially, John Wayne Gacy, he's always really bothered me. Just the whole idea of this overweight man dressing in clown makeup and then scaring the shit out of his victims before he tortures them to death. That's just got to be one of the most terrifying things I can imagine. Much worse than the Stephen King movie It, because this guy was real and
real.
Yeah, he's doing worse things. Really,
well, it's interesting you brought up the Stephen King movie It, because right at the beginning of the film, there's a depiction of a smiley face. So that somebody within that film, either the director or the writer or somebody, put that smiley face in. Right at the first minute of the film, they actually draw a smiley face on a steamed up window. And I was like, oh, come on, man. Because that's the theme. It's about killing without, thinking it's fun, The universe is a big joke. But yeah, I mean, I think John Wayne Gacy is very disturbing too, because he was very social. He was like the head of the Friars Club, He was around tons of people all the time. There's a picture of him with Rosalind Carter, Jimmy Carter's wife, So it's very disturbing. And people think that he might have been networked, that other people were involved in those, So...
yeah, it really makes you have to ask certain questions, because when these networks do exist, they kind of tend to take whoever got caught and turn them into the, push it all onto them, so to speak.
Well, that's a great point. I mean, they say that Berkowitz, the son of Sam killer, could not have killed all those people. There were other people involved, but the police had a suspect, and that was it. This is our boy. We're done. The murders are done. So... that's like one of, it's The Ultimate Evil was a book by Maury Terry that explained, hey, something else is going on here. And that happens in other cases. There was the case out of the Dutroux case out of Belgium, where all kinds of people were involved in this child abduction, horrible stuff, kept in dungeons, raped, all that stuff. And some of the women died in these dungeons. So there are actually similarities between that case and I believe the SFK cases. But, it went all the way to the top. That whole case was suppressed. There was like people marching in the streets. The government almost shut down. And, you might find, part of part of these cases is super disturbing. And I do believe,
could these ones have any sort of link to Satanism?
Absolutely. No question. I believe that smiley face is used in words to have 2 meaning things. If you watch the documentary, you'll see the satanic, current that runs underneath these crimes. So
Yeah,
it's really disturbing. Yeah.
yeah, that's a very very powerful thing going on, especially considering that this Satanism, it seems to underpin just so many things out there, like the music industry, maybe even the government. It just seems that these satanic sort of lines just stretch in every direction.
It's a good point. If you will look at like Selena Gomez or Miley Cyrus, they're outfitted in all these smiley face attire. It shows up in all these places. If you research the Pizzagate thing that went down in D.C., some of those Instagram accounts associated with Alefantis' account had with people wearing the smiley face. So it's an underground symbol. It goes back to Burroughs, and William Burroughs was a real crazy person. But I showed the line from Burroughs through some of these other people whose names I don't want to mention, but they're in the documentary. And I actually spent about an hour in the documentary showing all the smiley face references in films, books, and music. So it's there. It's definitely there.
I recall seeing it on Nirvana shirts, I believe.
Exactly. Nirvana. And where do you know that Nirvana and Cobain spent time with William Burroughs and they made an album together?
I just recently learned about that connection. That's a whole world unto itself.
Yeah, and there are pictures of them together. And I'll give you a little teaser, but I have pictures of who I think some of these perps were with William Burroughs in my documentary.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Was he? Did he have something like that possibly going on?
Well, he killed his wife under suspicious circumstances. Supposedly put an apple on her head. But he was I think my understanding, I can't say I have a great knowledge of William Burroughs, but my understanding is he was like a sexual kind of occultist who knew about Crowley, knew about the 23 Enigma, which you see a lot around. You actually can see the 23 Enigma and the smiley face in the movie Suicide Squad. The actual picture of Suicide Squad is a smiley face. They're all in together in a smiley face look, if you look at that. And they drive a bus 23, the 23 Enigma. 2/3 of one is 666, right?
And speaking of Suicide Squad, to circle back to something you said earlier about these guys having a belief that life is meaningless, that's pretty much the Joker by definition. That's
right.
what he believes.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And you can look at Alan Moore, The Killing Joke, and all this stuff. Yeah. So it's something I just came across within the last week, a song by Motorhead, which is called Smile As You Kill. So that's an interesting connection. So these guys in the underground know about some of these ideas, some of these concepts. But yeah, it's really incredible. A lot of people are in on it. I do believe a lot of it. If you look at the smiley face symbology, you'll see it pop up all over the place. It's actually much more common, but it's there, I believe, intentionally by a lot of these Hollywood elite types.
Yeah, who would think something so sweet and innocent as a smiley face would actually be something related to Satanism?
Not me. That's the sinister aspect of it, right? Because it's just like a number. Like Crowley's number is 93, and Satanists use it all the time because it equates to agape and thelema. But most people would look at 93 or 11, the number of magic. They would just look at it and not know the secret meaning. But the insiders do, people who've been initiated or stuff like that. So,
yeah, I've been waking up to a lot of this stuff recently. I used to hate numerology and stuff like that. I just didn't understand it. But recently, I've come to understand that this is actually a hidden code that these people use to communicate with each other.
Yes, correct. Absolutely. I mean, that was the gist of my first book. Prophet of Evil, is that the numbers of the whole 9/11 event, the date 9/11, the Twin Towers, the planes, were all Crowley thelemic numbers,
Can we go into that a little bit?
Sure.
This is just so fascinating. I know both the number 9 and the number 11 do symbolize something in particular. Well, I'll let you go ahead and explain.
Well, I don't know the totality. I know 11 very well, but 9, my understanding is that that's the power number. It's the highest number before numbers start revolving into power of 2. And not Michael Aquino, was the other guy, Anton LaVey. All of his power kind of concepts were laid out in the 9 numbers because of 9 is a power number. So you'll see that 9. And 11 is the number of magic. It's also symbolizes like certain negative energies within the Kabbalah. And it also symbolizes the coming together of the macrocosm and the microcosm, which are represented by the numbers 5 and 6. So 5 and 6 together equal 11, which is why Harry Potter's name is a 5 and a 6, and why his wand is 11 inches long, right? So he's got all these power magic, and these kids are being indoctrinated with this. They don't know the totality of it, but once they get older, if they get initiated, they'll figure it out. But 11 for Crowley was also the number of the new aeon. He believed that it symbolized his idea of the ideal world. So it's a much more scary number because he believed that, you know, the new aeon was a new cosmological change that would take place in humanity. So when you see this 11th, September 11th, that's why that date. That's why I believe the people who did 9/11 chose that date. I don't think they even have a choice. So you see those numbers, 11, 77, 93, and 175. The reason 77 is important is 7 is the number of the perfected man. 7 and 7 is like a union of two people, but it also is the 77 infernal names of Satan, one of which name of the infernal names of Satan is the Demogorgon, which is why the Demogorgon is named that in Stranger Things, right? So that's just another name for Satan. So 77 is, and that's listed out in LaVey's books. But it also symbolizes, like, though 77 was the number of Babylon for Aleister Crowley, and also Liber Oz, which was the rights of man, this whole idea where you can do whatever you want, and if anybody thwarts those rights, kill him. So he actually listed that out in this book, Liber Oz. So that's 77. And then 93, Crowley in his kind of scribblings used the Kabbalah to give numbers, give words their numerical value. And two very important words and concepts within his religion, agape and thelema, equaled 93. So agape means love, thelema means will. And the name, if you read the Book of the Law, which Crowley supposedly was received by Satan. Satan dictated him the law as Awas in 1904 in Egypt. There's a commandment that all of the followers will be known as Thelemites. So Thelema is 93. So you'll see this 93 bandied about. One of the more fascinating numbers that concludes the 9/11 event is 175, which is a series of rituals that you do to prove that you adore your God. And it's Crowley's, I forgot the name of it, but it's Liber 170. So Liber means book. But it's a remarkable piece and also a bookend that shows the deep thelemic meaning and understanding of the perpetrators of the events of 9/11, that they would actually include a ritual that Crowley wrote. So all those thelemic numbers, and actually they were integrated within the Twin Towers, which were financed by Rockefeller family. David Rockefeller and Nelson Rockefeller provided the land for that, and the UN, of all things, the United Nations, which is both on Manhattan. But those buildings themselves were built at 110 stories. So those are both an 11. But they're both an 11 featuring the skyline. And the number 11 for Crowley also was also kind of a visual thing that symbolized two things coming together. So when that building got torn down, they built a new building that looks like a hexagram. It's like another occult illuminated building. So, 9/11, it was kind of like a human sacrifice that involved things like you would see from the Wicker Man. Like the Wicker Man, the non-initiates get lured into this wicker and burned to death. So, so there's 9/11 was just an incredible event that people who are not initiated or do not understand the occult, like me back then, had no clue of really what happened. But I'm still trying to figure it out. It's 20 years since, But it was...
Yeah, me too. I become ever increasingly disturbed learning this stuff because, now if I was to see an event like this happen, if I saw the number 11, I'd be like, oh, okay, it's them.
Right. Well, me too. Like I was once in Nevada, and there was a guy with a jacket 93, and I was like, I know exactly what you're doing, man. You're sending a signal out, to your fellow Thelemites, people who believe that. So... it's there, and I do believe that those numbers were signaling numbers to all Thelemites that this is an event. 2001 was the date, 9/11 was the day, and I think it was it's kind of like was a time meridian. I think it's 2,000 years since Christ's birth, right? So yeah, it's just an incredible high Masonic event with people who really thought. If you read, like, there was a guy, I think it was there was a guy, it was Lafayette was the guy who designed it and was literally receiving information from a demon. I forgot the name of it. Like, he had these ideas where they came from the demonic realm, from other beings. It's off the charts. And,
Whoa!
yeah,
oh, wait.
Yeah, and then there's an interview, or really, if you want to have your mind blown out, it was an interview with, I see his face, I can't remember his name. He runs a podcast, but he had like a literal sit down with this guy. And so you look up Laffoley, Laffoley. And I'm going to find his name.
Yeah, that is extremely disturbing, obviously.
I mean, even if I type this in, it says Paul Laffoley, painter inspired by time travel and aliens, dies at 80. But he was in Paranoia magazine, but he also it was Freeman. Freeman interviewed him. You know who Freeman is?
Oh, Freeman Fly.
Yes, so he interviewed Paul Laffoley. So I would definitely recommend looking at that and who that guy was.
So all things being considered, could somebody have known that 9/11 was going to happen before it did, just by looking at numbers? Or
I think that I do think that people knew 9/11 was going to happen. I do think that large amounts of people knew 9/11 to happen, and I believe even larger amount of people knew it was an inside job once the day of it happened, right? But everybody was like too afraid to actually say something. The only person I didn't know was an inside job. It took me 2 or 3 years. I was like, something fishy's going on. But the real person was, I can't remember these names now. But some people knew. They knew right away that it was a huge stage event. It's really hard to believe it's a stage event because you also have to believe that all these other people are in on it. The media, the government, all these other people just went along with it, and the military. But that's exactly what happened. And
what's really sad about it is there's an entire subset of humans out there, followers of Islam, that got blamed for this bullshit, which is wrong on every level.
I agree. Yeah, so I mean, I think that whole thing was just a big, it was a structured thing to start a war. They needed an idea to start a war, and that was it. As Dave McGowan was the guy who knew the day that it happened, and Dave McGowan wrote weird scenes inside the canyon. He also wrote really good stuff on his website about the Lincoln murder, Lincoln assassination. So Dave McGowan keyed into it right away. And
also Bill Cooper. Bill
Cooper, right. No, you're right. So you're right. So it's Bill Cooper and Dave McGowan. So they knew. And Bill, the thing is like I remember we talking on our last show about how the elites get rid of people and put somebody into their place. Do you remember that?
That sounds like a conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I vaguely remember I talk about that. But who Bill Cooper died, and who got inserted into that kind of space? Alex Jones. Right. And Bill Cooper's death is highly suspicious. They were antagonizing him, and he actually predicted his own death. Like, they're going to get me. So I think he saw it coming.
One thing that I learned recently is if you're looking at an obituary and you see the number 11 a bunch of times, that means that there's a good chance that person's not even really dead.
Really interesting. I didn't know that. Not surprised. I just sent you a young picture of Bill Cooper. I came across it. I was like, oh man, he looks like a American military guy.
Yeah, he's got that Captain America look.
Yeah, he does. I mean, the guy was a giant, dude. Before before the internet, it was Behold a Pale Horse was really one of the original underground books. So,
oh my God, that book! I read it way after the fact, of course, as an adult, and it was just every bit as impactful as I could possibly imagine it being. If you were to read it when Bill Cooper was first coming around.
Yeah, there was a he did a series about the UN, like a bunch of different subjects. He titled it something, but those for me were very influential because I listened to all of them. And he talked about the waiting room inside the UN with the black cube of Saturn. So he was keyed into a lot of this occult stuff, before 9/11. So it's he was a remarkable guy.
Yeah, he was also one of the only people and first people to call out all of these disinformation agents that are going out there.
Yeah, he was against Jones, right? So I mean,
very much so.
Yeah, I mean, Jones' parents are like intelligence. It's just a big mess.
Yeah, even this recent thing, since we're on the subject, I just got to ask, what do you think of this whole thing with Alex Jones getting kicked off of social media and getting banned and all of that stuff?
I don't know. It's just very odd. I think that, if you wanted to give somebody credibility, you do these public things that everybody knows about, right? Like maybe people have suspicions, and his handler said, okay, well, let's give him some credibility. Let's do this. Kick him off social media. So, it's just very suspicious. So, I mean, there's things, yeah. I mean, there's real problems there with Jones, man. Real problems. So,
yeah, and especially, I mean, Jones, this is a point I like to make, especially recently. He was this huge conspiracy guy, very much against the government. And then suddenly overnight, he turns into the spokesperson for the Republican Party.
Right. Oh, dude, he was like the primary head for Trump, right?
Yeah.
And he's sitting there with Stone, this longtime Republican operative for 40 years, Roger Stone. So he turned that right for Trump, Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. Got him elected. But I mean, the Jones people, that's probably where that base went out. Once Jones told about the spirit cooking within the Podesta emails, people were like, whoa, this is a whole nightmare. We got to get out and vote. So a lot of those people may have been on the fence of voting. And they're like, the Christians went out and said, nope, not going to go there, dude. Not going to vote for Hillary. So I was actually very fortunate because if Hillary became president, we would be in real trouble. So,
yeah, all things being even, I don't think, regardless of what's going on, I don't think anybody would want Hillary in there.
Oh, no, man. No, not at all. When she did her most recent thing, I was looking at her, I was like, this person's criminally insane. I actually didn't even look at her like she was like saying anything legit. It was just like a bunch of crazy, deranged stuff. I was like, whoa. So, yeah, I mean, we can get into that subject, but yeah. So, I mean, I think a lot of suspicious stuff is happening. I do believe that if you look at this whole caravan thing, you look at the the Kavanaugh hearings where that was clearly like a structured event for max propaganda benefits. If you look at this kind of David Hogue guy, the anti-gun thing, there are people actively, groups, not just on the left, but also on the right, who are involved in massive propaganda tactical campaigns, that are trying to have maximum effect upon the public. So you got to watch out. And so that's this whole Jones thing that he got kicked off of social media may be one of these things, Hey, look, Jones is legit. He just got kicked off of Facebook and Twitter. He got kicked off of YouTube. This guy's really fighting for us, right?
And kind of circling back to a guy like Crowley or some of these Satanist types, when you think about it, these cults, these secret societies, these clubs, basically what they are is control. It's mind control. It's you have to obey me and do what I say.
So true. That's like the distillation. I did an interview where I said, mind control is the handmaiden of the occult. It's always there. People getting into your brain and taking you over whatever, where they're trying to traumatize you, make you afraid. I do believe 9/11 was like this mass traumatizing event, which is it's traumatizing. So people then are, once they're traumatized, they're susceptible to suggestion. So just like you said, I'm terrified. Oh, Osama bin Laden, Osama bin Laden. And people just go, oh yeah, it's Osama bin Laden. I don't have any evidence. We'll just say that, right? So if you look at a lot of these guys who are into the occult, they're all into mind control, man. They're all into they all read books on mind control. They talk about it. LaVey was talking about mind control. If you look at Michael Aquino, who was kind of an offshoot of LaVey, he was a psychological operations guy for the military, wrote a book from from psyops to mind war, which means that he was trying to actually advance psyops into a constant state of war on individuals' minds. It's a fascinating book. If you ever want to read some military style mind control stuff, it's available. It's called.
Oh, yeah, actually, I got a copy off Amazon, and I read through the first chapter, and I was so disgusted, so pissed off, and so angry at what I was reading, I stopped reading it.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Got through one chapter before realizing that there's something seriously wrong with justifying spying on your own people, period.
Right. I mean, there's real problems with that, too. So. Yeah, it's interesting that you brought that up, man. A lot of mind, and it's a lot of it happening today. And there's all different types of mind control, but really, I think you really don't have to implant something in somebody's brain. You don't have to implant a receiver or anything. You just give them really crappy ideas, pound it in. What did George Bush say? Catapult to propaganda. So he just kept saying that. I mean, openly said it with a smile, like, "Ha ha, I'm doing this to you," right? So it's a strange world we live in, man.
And with this Bin Laden character, I mean, if you want to call him that, the way that I see it, he's pretty much the fake terrorist from the book 1984.
Right. Goldstein? Yeah, Goldstein. Absolutely. Totally agree with you. And I mean, that it's like somebody read 1984 and didn't take it as a cautionary tale. They took it as a blueprint, Like, oh, this is a great idea. Let's have a fake enemy. Let's drug people down, give them victory gin, victory cigarettes. Let's watch them all the time. Let's control them, That's really it.
And the whole concept of the double talk, that is just so cool nowadays.
And somebody censoring everything, all that stuff.
And also the guy that helps Winston and Julia, the fake rebel, the Alex Jones type. There's a character that in the book.
Oh man, it's amazing. And like the Ministry of Truth, they're all pyramids,
Yeah.
So that's an incredible book. I need to read it again. Look, man, I wish I didn't have to do this, but I gotta run, man. I gotta cut this short. I'm really sorry. Let's redo it another one. Let's do another one in the future. And talk about a different subject, but my family.
We got some info out there. If you like, did you want to take another minute and just do a little closing, give some plugs, or do a final?
Yeah, thanks for having me on your show. It's great to be back with you. And my movie is The Smiley Face Killers, it's on Vimeo, Vimeo. You can look up William Ramsey or check that out. And I would highly recommend everybody watch that, particularly people in college or younger men, because you are the target and you do not want this to happen to you. So please do check it out. It's reasonably priced, and I think it's worth the value.
Did you want to introduce your kitty to us?
No, my cat's bothering me. The thing is that like once I sit down on a chair, she thinks it's time to just like she's got me immobile. So she just bothered me the whole time. She's looking at me right now. She's staring at me. I gotta go, man. Thanks. Take care.
All right. Well, really appreciate having you on. Definitely.
I appreciate you as well. Thank you. Cheers.
All right.